Is it possible for humans to have unconscious precognition? In other words, do humans have the capability of knowing the future and what's to come? While we do not have enough evidence to scientifically prove and show the unconscious precognition, we do have some evidence at the electrophysiological and heart rate level to show that humans, like animals, are able to have this something called gut instinct or gut feeling right before a future. The electrophysiology discipline is the branch in biology that measures and observes the electrical activities of the body. And gut instinct being a internal inner reaction to an immediate future event, whether we know the outcome or not, which is a phenomenon that we can clearly see and detect with wild animals, for example. In animals, for example, being able to detect danger or immediate future events is extremely important because it's a skill that it's needed for their survival mechanisms. For example, we have seen over and over in the animals that they are able to predict an upcoming earthquake a few seconds before it happens. Now the question is, do humans have the same capability? And if so, are we able to scientifically observe it, measure it, and prove it? To some extent, we do have some evidence where successful people in any field and in any state of their life appear to have this instinct where they clearly listen to it and based on that appear to making a lot of decisions that at the end tend to be good for them, hence make them successful. Anecdotally, if you yourself have ever lived or stayed at a place where it's like let's say a animal farm, you've noticed that a lot of operations in that farm appear to circle around this animal instinct that happens day and night in that farm. As a personal experience, when I was a kid, we stayed at one of these farms where there were a lot of horses for about 10 days. And one of the things that I noticed was that obviously humans were outnumbered by the animals, but a lot of the daily operations of the farm circled around what the animals reacted to, what the animals felt, and what they showed to these humans. And it was as if the animal instinct had become an extension to the humans' sort of operational mode or instinct, because they were extremely in tune with how animals reacted, how animals felt, and basically how they communicated their experience within the environment with these human farmers. However, the further and further away from nature that we go, and the further we go into, for example, cities where humans are less connected with nature, it appears that while we might have this gut feeling and some proof to have it, we do not always tend to either listen to it or follow. Now, coming back to the scientific world, the question is that, do we have some evidence to show that there are some changes within the human body and brain prior to the event happening? For example, the way in which we are able to observe an animal reacting a few seconds before Earth. It turns out that we do. The body of knowledge is not huge, but there are some evidence to show that this is happening. One of the earliest studies happened in the 70s. That's when the scientists looked at the brainwaves activities to see whether there were any subtle changes or significant changes in brainwaves activities for humans who might be able to, for example, sense an immediate future event or outcome. These scientists in their lab were able to show that there were some subtle brainwaves activity changes, where the brainwave activity is lowered a bit in frequency right before a future stimuli that was happening in the lab. And obviously, when you have scientific studies, the lab is very controlled. You have to control all the variables in the lab. So this was done pretty rigorously in the lab. Later on in the 90s, there were additional studies done with participants who were trying to do gambling, for example, of roulette, again, in the scientific and very controlled environment in the scientific world. And they were able to also there show that there were some slight brain activity changes right before the outcome of a roulette gambling for the participants in this lab study. It appeared that the participants of these studies had an unconscious precognition of the outcome of the, for example, in this case, a roulette gambling trial and error, and the outcome was significant enough for the scientists to be able to read those different brain activity signals changes, again, pre the outcome of these trials. And most recent studies have shown that these changes were significant not only at the brainwaves activities, but also at the heart rate activities, as well as in the skin conductance activities or electrical changes in the skin. Where these scientists measure the skin conductance level, the heart rate levels, as well as the blood volume levels. And they were able to show significant changes in these levels before an event and a few seconds before the future event. And also future studies using fMRI machines showed also that there were some slight brain activity changes in the regions close to the amygdala. And so there's a consistent findings in these scientific studies over the years that show that there are some slight changes within the body and the brain of humans, exactly like animals do, right before, a few seconds before a future stimuli, a future event is about to happen. These results were more apparent, especially if the immediate future event had some emotional consequence for the participants of this study. And this is an anecdotal level, what most of us feel. For example, there is an innate instinct gut reaction to something or someone, and a lot of times we can't even explain what it is. We just sometimes have a reaction to it. How is this possible though, and why is it happening, you may ask? At a scientific level, we do not know how this is possible. We don't have enough evidence to show that, but we do have some evidence, some small evidence nonetheless, that it does exist, because the reaction within the internal body happens. And this is both at the physiological, cellular, biological, at the body level, as well as at the neurological level, at the brain level activity. Science, like everything else, is fluid and it has to move. That's why we consistently do scientific studies. And so this means that these are initial body of knowledge, that there is some evidence, and future studies definitely is possible, like any field in the scientific world, or medical work for that matter, that we need to do continuous research, because every time we learn something, we actually come up with more questions that we need to further investigate.